Martha Eleanor Caldwell's hand shook as the pen touched paper. One signature. That's all it took to sell a daughter. A single tear fell onto the contract, smearing the ink where it said, "Mail order bride." Her father didn't even look at her. 26 years of trying to be enough, and this was her worth a train ticket west and a stranger's name. But the family who threw her away didn't know the truth. The man waiting in those Wyoming mountains wasn't looking for a beauty. He was looking for her. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to my channel and stay until the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let me tell you how Martha Caldwell became the Queen of the Mountains. The summer of 1878 arrived in Boston with a heat that made the cobblestones shimmer. But inside the Caldwell townhouse on Beacon Hill, the air was cold enough to freeze blood. Martha stood before her father's desk. Cornelius Caldwell didn't rise. He never did for her. "You summoned me, Father." "Sit down, Martha." She remained standing. At 5 feet 9 inches, she towered over most men when they sat. She'd learned that small act of defiance years ago. Cornelius shuffled papers without looking up. "I've found a solution to your situation. My situation. Don't play coy. You're 26, unmarried. The Hendersons' boy refused your company last month. The Whitmore heir before that. Your sisters are all settled with respectable men, and you remain here like a millstone around my neck." Martha's jaw tightened. "Perhaps if you hadn't told Mr. Henderson that I was sturdy enough to birth a dozen children like a draft horse." "I was being practical." Cornelius finally looked at her. His eyes, the same gray-blue as hers, held nothing but irritation. "You're not pretty, Martha. We both know it. Your mother, God rest her, was a beauty. Your sisters inherited her delicacy. He waved his hand. "You inherited whatever makes you this." The words didn't sting anymore. They had stopped stinging when she was 14 and overheard him tell a business partner that his fourth daughter had the face of a frontier woman and the temperament to match. "What is this solution?" Martha asked. Cornelius slid a newspaper clipping across the desk. Martha picked it up. "Wife wanted. Rancher in Wyoming Territory seeks woman of strong constitution for partnership. Beauty not required. Survival instinct preferred. Respond to J.N. Mercer, Wind River Ranch." "A mail-order bride advertisement," Martha said flatly. "An opportunity." Cornelius leaned back. "I've already corresponded with this Mercer fellow. Sent him your photograph, the one where you're not scowling. He accepted." "You did what?" "He seems quite eager, actually. Wrote back that you look capable. Can you imagine? Someone finds you capable, Martha. It's practically a compliment." Martha's hands crushed the newspaper clipping. "You sold me to a stranger. I arranged a marriage." Cornelius stood now, adjusting his waistcoat. "The contract is drawn. The train ticket is purchased. You leave in 3 days. And if I refuse—" For the first time, her father smiled. It was not kind. "Then you'll live on the street, Martha. I've tolerated your presence for 26 years. My patience has ended. Sign the contract and go to Wyoming with a trunk and a small allowance. Refuse and you leave this house tonight with nothing but the dress you're wearing." The room tilted. Martha gripped the edge of the desk. "Father, the choice is yours." He walked past her toward the door. "But I'd sign quickly if I were you. Your sisters are coming for dinner tonight, and I'd rather not explain why you're still here." He left. Martha stood alone in the study, the newspaper clipping crumpled in her fist. That evening, Martha found her eldest sister, Caroline, in the parlor. Caroline was everything Martha was not: petite, golden-haired, and married to a bank president who adored her. "I heard Father finally found someone desperate enough to take you," Caroline said, not looking up from her embroidery. "Did you come to gloat?" "I came to help you pack." Caroline set down her needlework. "Honestly, Martha, you should be grateful. Wyoming is, well, it's savage, but at least you'll fit in there." What does that mean? It means you've always been more comfortable with horses than people, more interested in father's medical books than finding a husband. You're not suited for Boston society. Perhaps you're suited for whatever is out there. Caroline picked up her embroidery again. Bears and natives and cowboys. You might actually find your people. Martha moved toward the door. You're cruel, Caroline. I'm honest. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Not in this family. Martha didn't sleep that night. She sat by her window watching the gas lights flicker on Beacon Hill and thought about the life that had led her here. Her mother had died giving birth to her youngest sister when Martha was 8. Martha remembered her mother's hands soft, always smelling of lavender. She remembered being told she looked nothing like her. You must take after your father's people, Aunt Lydia had said once. The Caldwell women were never pretty, but they were sturdy. Sturdy. That word had followed Martha like a curse. She thought about the men who had courted her sisters, charming men with soft hands and softer words. None of them had ever looked at Martha. When they did, their eyes slid past her like water off stone. She thought about the medical texts she had stolen from her father's study. The diagrams of bones and muscles. The chapters on healing herbs and fever treatments. She had taught herself because no one would teach her. She had learned because learning was the only thing that was hers. And now she was being sent to Wyoming. To a man named J.N. Mercer, who wanted a woman of strong constitution. Martha pulled out the crumpled advertisement again. Beauty not required. Survival instinct preferred. Something shifted in her chest. Not hope she had abandoned hope years ago, but curiosity perhaps. Or defiance. If her father wanted to send her away as punishment, then she would turn his punishment into something else. She would survive. She would not break. And she would never, ever return to this house begging for mercy. Martha lit a candle and began to write a letter to J.N. Mercer. The train journey took 12 days. Martha watched America transform outside her window. The green hills of Pennsylvania, the flat farmlands of Ohio, the endless prairies of Nebraska where the grass stretched to the horizon like a golden sea. The other passengers avoided her. She was too tall, too quiet, too intense. A woman traveling alone was already suspect. A woman traveling alone to Wyoming was either desperate or dangerous. Martha didn't mind the solitude. She spent her time reading the small collection of books she had packed: a medical manual, a guide to Western flora, and a worn copy of the advertisement that had sealed her fate. At night, when the train car grew dark and the other passengers slept, Martha wondered about the man waiting for her. What kind of man advertised for a wife? A lonely one, perhaps, or a practical one, or a monster who couldn't find a woman any other way. She thought about the stories she'd heard of frontier men, rough, violent, half-wild. Men who drank whiskey for breakfast and shot first and never asked questions at all. Maybe I'm being sent to my death, she thought. But even that seemed preferable to another dinner with Caroline. The train arrived at Green River Station on a blazing afternoon in late July. Martha stepped onto the platform and felt the heat hit her like a physical force. Boston summers were humid and heavy. This was different. This was dry heat that sucked the moisture from her lungs and made her skin feel like paper. The station was small, a single wooden building with a faded sign. Beyond it, the land stretched in waves of brown and gold, broken only by distant mountains that shimmered like mirages. Miss Caldwell. Martha turned. A man approached. He was older, perhaps 50, with a weathered face and kind eyes. I'm Tom Riley. The Reverend sent me to fetch you. Mr. Mercer couldn't come himself, some trouble with the cattle. Asked me to bring you to Wind River. How far is it? Half a day's ride. You comfortable on a wagon? I'll manage. Tom Riley looked at her, really looked the way most people didn't, and nodded slowly. I reckon you will miss. I reckon you will. The journey to Wind River Ranch was silent. Tom Riley wasn't a talker, and Martha was grateful. She watched the landscape change as they climbed into the foothills. The brown grass gave way to patches of green. The air cooled slightly. She saw antelope grazing in the distance, their white tails flashing as they bounded away from the wagon. "What's he like?" Martha asked finally. Tom didn't ask who she meant. "Jack Mercer. He's a good man, miss. Quiet. Keeps to himself mostly. Lost his wife some years back, and it broke something in him." Tom paused. "He ain't looking for love, if that's what you're wondering. He's looking for someone who won't die." Die. His Sarah, that was his wife, she was a city girl. Pretty as a picture, gentle as a lamb. She couldn't handle the winters, couldn't handle the isolation. When she got with child, Tom shook his head. The baby never came. Sarah died trying to bring it. Jack blamed himself, said he should never have brought her to a place so hard. Martha absorbed this. And now he wants another wife. He wants a partner, someone who can survive, someone strong. Tom glanced at her. That advertisement, he wrote it himself. Said he didn't care what she looked like. Said he cared whether she could last through a Wyoming summer and a Wyoming winter and still be standing when spring came. "And you think I can—" Tom was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Miss Caldwell, I've been driving this wagon 30 years. Seen a lot of women come out here. Most of 'em look at these mountains and start crying. You look at 'em like you're trying to figure out how to climb 'em. Maybe I am. Then you might just be exactly what Jack Mercer needs." Yeah. They arrived at Wind River Ranch as the sun began to set. Martha saw it first as a collection of shadows, a main house, a barn, several outbuildings. As the wagon drew closer, details emerged. The house was solid, built from local timber with a wide porch that faced west. The barn was large and well maintained. Cattle dotted the distant hills. It was not beautiful, but it was real. Tom pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house. "He knows you're coming," Tom said. "I'll leave you here." Martha climbed down. Her legs ached from the journey. Her dress was covered in dust. She looked like she'd crawled through a desert. The front door opened. Jackson Mercer stepped onto the porch. Martha's breath caught. He was taller than her, which was rare. Broad-shouldered and lean-muscled with dark hair that showed threads of silver at the temples. His face was weathered hard angles, softened only by eyes that held something Martha couldn't name. Sadness, perhaps. Or resignation. He was not handsome in the way Boston men were handsome. There was nothing soft about him, nothing polished. But when he looked at her, he didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He didn't let his eyes slide past her like she wasn't there. He looked at her like he was trying to see something beneath the surface. "Miss Caldwell," he said. His voice was low, rough from disuse. "Mr. Mercer." A long silence stretched between them. The summer wind stirred dust at their feet. "You're taller than I expected," Jack said finally. "Is that a problem?" "No, ma'am." Something that might have been a smile ghosted across his face. "Just means you'll be able to reach the high shelves without a ladder." Martha blinked. She had expected criticism. She had expected disappointment. She had not expected practicality laced with humor. "My father said you accepted me because I looked capable," she said carefully. "Your father's a liar and a cheat." Martha stiffened. "You know him." "I know men like him. I've seen the type." Jack stepped down from the porch. He moved closer, and Martha held her ground. "He sent you here as punishment, didn't he? Figured I was some kind of monster and you'd suffer." "Yes. And you came anyway." "I didn't have a choice." Jack studied her face. His eyes moved over the sharp angles, the strong jaw, the stubborn set of her mouth. "There's always a choice, Miss Caldwell. You could have disappeared. You could have run. You could have found another way." He paused. "But you got on that train and rode 12 days to meet a stranger. That tells me something about you." "What does it tell you?" "That you don't break easy." Jack turned and walked back toward the porch. "That's all I need to know. Dinner's at sundown. I'll show you to your room." He disappeared inside. Martha stood alone in the fading light, the dust settling around her, and realized something strange. For the first time in 26 years, someone had looked at her and seen exactly what she was. And he hadn't turned away. Martha woke before dawn. For a moment she didn't know where she was. The ceiling was wrong. The smell was wrong. Then memory flooded back: the train, the wagon, the tall stranger who had looked at her without flinching. She dressed quickly in the simplest dress she'd brought. The house was silent. She found her way to the kitchen and stopped. Jack Mercer stood at the stove, cracking eggs into a cast-iron skillet. He glanced over his shoulder. "You're up early?" "I couldn't sleep." "Strange bed, strange place. It'll pass." He gestured to the table. "Coffee's hot. Sit." Martha sat. She wrapped her hands around the tin cup he set before her and watched him cook. His movements were efficient, practiced. A man who had lived alone for years. "I should be doing that," she said. "Why?" "Because I'm the wife, or I will be. That's my job." Jack slid eggs onto 2 plates and brought them to the table. He sat across from her, his eyes steady. "Miss Caldwell, let me be clear about something. I didn't bring you here to be my servant. I brought you here to be my partner. That means we share the work. All of it." "My father said—" "Your father isn't here." Jack cut into his eggs. "What he told you about this arrangement doesn't matter. What matters is what we decide. Together." Martha stared at him. "You don't know me." "No, I don't. And you don't know me. That's why we're going to take our time." He met her eyes. "The Reverend will come next Sunday to perform the ceremony. Until then, you sleep in your room, I sleep in mine. We work the ranch, we learn each other. If by Sunday you want to leave, I'll put you on a train myself. And if I stay, then we build something real." Jack stood and carried his plate to the basin. "Finish your breakfast. I'll show you the ranch." Martha watched him walk out. Something real. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had offered her that. The first week was brutal. Martha learned that a Wyoming summer was nothing like a Boston summer. The heat was relentless, baking the earth until it cracked. Water was precious. Every drop had to be hauled from the creek or pumped from the well. Jack didn't coddle her. He handed her a shovel and pointed to the irrigation ditch. "It's clogged. Needs clearing before we lose the vegetable garden." Martha looked at the ditch. It was filled with dried mud and rocks. "This will take hours." "Then you'd better start now." She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him that she was a Caldwell of Boston, that she had never held a shovel in her life. But something in his eyes stopped her. Not cruelty, expectation. He expected her to do it because he believed she could. Martha took the shovel. 3 hours later, her hands were blistered and her back screamed. But the water was flowing again. Jack found her sitting on the porch, staring at her ruined palms. He didn't say anything. He just took her hands, turned them over, and studied the damage. Then he disappeared inside and returned with a tin of salve. "This'll sting." It did. Martha hissed through her teeth. "You finished the ditch," Jack said, rubbing the salve into her blisters. "You said it needed doing." "Most women would have quit after an hour." "I'm not most women." Jack looked up at her. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "No," he said quietly. "You're not." He released her hands and stood. "Tomorrow I'll teach you to ride properly. That side saddle nonsense won't work out here." "I can ride." "You can sit on a horse. That's not the same thing." Martha bristled. "I've been riding since I was—" "Have you ever chased a runaway calf across open country, ridden through a flash flood, outrun a thunderstorm that could kill you in seconds?" She was silent. "That's what I thought." Jack's voice softened. "I'm not insulting you, Miss Caldwell. I'm keeping you alive. There's a difference." The riding lessons began the next morning. Jack had a mare named Bonnie, a chestnut with a gentle temperament and strong legs. He saddled her and held out the reins to Martha. "Mount up." Martha approached the horse. She'd ridden dozens of times in Boston, always side saddle, always on groomed paths with a groom walking alongside. This was different. There was no mounting block, no assistance, no one to catch her if she fell. She grabbed the saddle horn and swung herself up. Jack nodded. "Good. Now forget everything you learned back east." For 3 hours, he ran her through drills: how to sit deep in the saddle, how to guide the horse with her legs, not just the reins, how to move with the animal instead of against it. Martha fell twice. The second time, she landed hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. Jack stood over her, blocking the sun. "You hurt." "Just my pride." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. He extended a hand. "Pride heals. Broken bones don't. Get up." She took his hand. His grip was strong and rough, calloused from years of work. He pulled her to her feet like she weighed nothing. "Again," he said. By the end of the first week, Martha could ride. Not well, but well enough. By the end of the second week, she could rope a fence post. By the end of the third week, she was helping with the cattle. And somewhere in those 3 weeks, something changed. It happened gradually, so slowly that Martha almost didn't notice. Jack started talking more, not much, but more. He told her about the ranch, about the seasons, about the rhythms of life in the mountains. He asked her questions about Boston, about her family, about the books she read. One evening, after a long day of mending fences, they sat on the porch watching the sun sink behind the peaks. "Why did you really answer that advertisement?" Jack asked. Martha was quiet for a moment. "Because I had nowhere else to go." "That's not the whole truth." She looked at him. "How do you know?" "Because I've seen desperate people. They have a certain look in their eyes. You have something different. Something harder." He met her gaze. "You came here to prove something." Martha's throat tightened. "My father called me a millstone. My sisters called me an embarrassment. Every man who ever looked at me saw exactly what I wasn't: pretty, delicate, submissive." She looked out at the mountains. "I wanted to go somewhere so far away that none of it mattered anymore. Somewhere I could be something other than the ugly daughter." "You're not ugly," Martha laughed bitterly. "You don't have to." "I don't say things I don't mean." Jack's voice was hard. "Your father is a fool and your sisters are blind. I've seen beautiful women who couldn't survive a single day out here. I've seen them wilt in the heat, cry at the first blister, beg to go home before the week was out. You—" He shook his head. "You cleared that irrigation ditch without a single complaint. You fell off a horse twice and got back on. You're learning faster than anyone I've ever seen." "That's not beauty." "Out here it is." Jack stood. "The mountains don't care about pretty faces, Miss Caldwell. They care about strength. And you have more strength than anyone gives you credit for, including yourself." He went inside. Martha sat alone on the porch watching the stars appear one by one. For the first time in her life, she wondered if her father had been wrong about her. The Reverend came on Sunday as promised. Samuel Moore was a weathered man with kind eyes and a booming voice that seemed too large for his thin frame. He arrived on a mule clutching a worn Bible and studied Martha with open curiosity. "So you're the one," he said, dismounting. "The mail-order bride from Boston." "I am." "Jackson Mercer hasn't shown interest in a woman since Sarah died. Must be something special about you." Martha didn't know how to respond to that. Jack emerged from the house freshly shaved, wearing a clean shirt. It was the first time Martha had seen him look anything other than work-worn. He was handsome, she realized. Not in the soft way of Boston gentlemen, but in a weathered, solid way that made something flutter in her chest. "Reverend," Jack said, shaking Moore's hand. "Jackson, you ready to do this?" Jack looked at Martha. "That depends on her." The Reverend turned to Martha. "Miss Caldwell, before we proceed, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." "All right. Do you want to be here truly?" "Because I've married reluctant brides before and it never ends well." If you're being forced, if you're here against your will, I'll put you on the next train east myself. Jackson would agree with me." Martha looked at Jack. He nodded. She thought about Boston, about the cold house and the colder father, about her sister's cruelty and her own loneliness. Then she thought about the last 3 weeks, the hard work, the honest conversations, the way Jack looked at her like she was something valuable. "I want to be here," she said. The Reverend smiled. "Then let's get you two married." The ceremony was simple. They stood on the porch facing each other while the Reverend read from his Bible. Martha's dress was plain cotton already dusty from the morning's chores. Jack wore no tie, no fancy suit. But when he took her hand, his grip was steady. When he said, "I do," his voice didn't waver. And when the Reverend pronounced them married, something settled in Martha's chest. Not love, not yet, but possibility. "You may kiss the bride," the Reverend said. Jack hesitated. Martha saw the question in his eyes, permission, not assumption. She stepped forward and kissed him first. It was brief, almost chaste. But when she pulled back, Jack was looking at her with something new in his expression. "Wasn't expecting that," he murmured. "I'm full of surprises, Mr. Mercer." "Jack." "What?" "My name is Jack. You're my wife now. You should probably use it." Martha smiled a real smile, not the polite grimace she'd perfected in Boston. "All right, Jack." The Reverend cleared his throat. "Well, I'd say that's a promising start. Now, is there any chance of lunch that mule doesn't ride as smooth as he used to?" The trouble started 3 days later. Martha was hauling water from the well when she heard hoofbeats. 3 riders approached the ranch moving fast. She dropped the bucket and ran for the house. "Jack," he was already on the porch, rifle in hand. "Get inside," he said. "Who are they?" "Nobody good. Inside. Now." Martha didn't argue. She ducked into the house but stayed by the window watching. The riders pulled up 30 feet from the porch. The leader was a big man in his 50s, silver-haired, wearing a tailored coat that had no business being in Wyoming. He smiled, and Martha felt ice crawl up her spine. "Jackson Mercer," the man called out. "It's been a while." "Not long enough, Sterling." Wade Sterling. Martha remembered Tom Riley mentioning the name, the cattle baron who wanted Jack's land. "I heard you got yourself a new wife." Sterling's eyes scanned the windows. Martha pulled back from the glass. "Mail order, wasn't it? From back east, must be desperate to send for a woman sight unseen." "State your business and leave." "My business is simple. This land. I want it." Sterling spread his hands. "The offer still stands, Mercer. $20,000. That's more than fair for this patch of rock and stubborn cattle." "The offer still stands," declined. Sterling's smile faded. "You're sitting on the best water source for 50 miles. My herds are dying of thirst while your creek runs full. It's not right. Your herds are dying because you overgraze your land and treat your water like it's endless." Jack's voice was flat. "That's not my problem. I'm making it your problem." Sterling leaned forward in his saddle. "I've been patient, Mercer. I gave you time to grieve your dead wife. I gave you space, but my patience has limits. So does my hospitality. Get off my land. This doesn't end here. It does today." Sterling stared at Jack for a long moment. Then he jerked his horse around and rode off, his men following. Jack didn't lower the rifle until they disappeared over the ridge. Martha stepped onto the porch. "That man wants to kill you." "Yes." "He won't stop coming." "No." "What are we going to do?" Jack finally looked at her. There was something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Not fear, but awareness. The awareness of a man who knew violence was coming and was calculating his options. "We're going to prepare," he said. "And you're going to learn to shoot." The shooting lessons began that afternoon. Jack set up targets along the fence line, tin cans, old bottles. A battered hat, he said, belonged to a man who once tried to steal his cattle. He handed Martha a rifle. "This is a Winchester. It holds 15 rounds. It'll knock you back if you're not ready for it." "I've never fired a gun." "I know. That's why we're starting now." He moved behind her, adjusting her stance. His hands were gentle but firm. "Feet apart, shoulder width. Lean into it slightly, the recoil will push you back." Martha raised the rifle. It was heavier than she expected. "Don't aim yet. Just feel the weight. Get comfortable." She stood there for a long moment, letting the rifle become familiar. "Now," Jack said. "See that can on the far post? Put your eye to the sight. Line up the notch with the target." Martha did as he said. The can swam into focus. "Breathe in. Breathe out. Squeeze the trigger on the exhale. Don't jerk it. Squeeze." She squeezed. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. The sound was deafening. The can didn't move. "You missed," Jack said. "Try again." She fired again. Missed again. Again! The seventh shot sent the can spinning off the post. "Good," Jack said. "Now do it 9 more times." By sunset, Martha's shoulder was bruised and her ears were ringing, but she could hit a tin can at 50 yards 3 times out of 5. "You're a natural," Jack said, taking the rifle from her. "I'm stubborn." "Same thing out here." He looked at her bruised shoulder and frowned. "We pushed too hard today." "I can take it." "I know you can. That's not the point." Jack's voice softened. "Just because you can endure something doesn't mean you should. Not alone. Not anymore." Martha didn't know what to say to that. That night after dinner, Jack told her about Wade Sterling. "He came to this territory 10 years ago with money and ambition. Bought up every ranch he could. The ones that wouldn't sell." Jack paused. "Bad things happened. Fires, accidents, men disappeared. And no one stopped him. Sterling owns the sheriff. He owns half the territorial government. The law doesn't apply to men like him." "Then how do we fight him?" Jack looked at her. "We don't fight. We survive. We outlast. Sterling is used to people breaking. If we don't break eventually, he'll move on to easier targets. And if he doesn't, then we fight." Martha absorbed this. "You're not afraid of him." "No." "Why not?" Jack was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low. "Because I already lost everything once. My wife, my child, my reason for living. I spent 6 years waiting to die. Then your letter came, and something changed." He met her eyes. "I have something to protect now. That makes me dangerous. Sterling doesn't understand that yet. But he will." Martha felt something crack open in her chest. "Jack, don't." He stood abruptly. "Don't say anything. Not yet. We barely know each other." "I know enough. You know what I've shown you. There's more. Darker things." He walked toward the door. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we ride to town. You need to meet the people who might help us if Sterling makes his move." He left. Martha sat alone in the kitchen, her heart pounding. He said he had something to protect. He meant her. The ride to town took 3 hours. Jackson's Crossing was a collection of wooden buildings clustered around a single muddy street. It wasn't much a general store, a saloon, a church, a sheriff's office. But to Martha, it was civilization. The first she'd seen in weeks. People stared as they rode in. A tall woman in men's trousers sitting astride a horse instead of side saddle. Jack's new wife, the mail-order bride. Martha kept her chin high. Let them stare. Jack dismounted in front of the general store. "Stay close to me. I can take care of myself." "I know. But Sterling has men in this town. No point inviting trouble." They went inside. The storekeeper, a heavy woman named Mrs. Patterson, looked Martha up and down. "So, you're the one," she said. "Heard about you. Boston, is it?" "Yes, ma'am." "Long way from home." "This is my home now." Mrs. Patterson's expression shifted. Something like approval flickered in her eyes. "Good answer. What do you need? They gathered supplies. Flour, sugar, coffee, ammunition. Jack paid in cash, and Martha noticed the storekeeper counting the bills carefully. As they loaded the wagon, a voice called out, "Well, well, the hermit of Wind River come down from his mountain." Martha turned. A young man approached. He was handsome in a sharp, predatory way, with blonde hair slicked back and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. A deputy's star glinted on his chest. "Deputy Collins," Jack said flatly. "I hear congratulations are in order." Collins looked at Martha with open interest. "She's taller than I expected, and sturdier." "Watch your mouth. Just making conversation." Collins stepped closer to Martha. "If you ever get tired of that lonely ranch, ma'am, come find me. I can show you what a real man looks like." Martha stepped toward him. Collins blinked, startled. She was nearly his height. "Deputy Collins," she said sweetly, "if you ever speak to me like that again, I will take that star off your chest and shove it somewhere the sun doesn't shine. Do we understand each other?" Collins's face reddened. His hand twitched toward his holster. Jack moved between them. His voice was very quiet. "Touch that gun, and I'll break your arm." The street had gone silent. Everyone was watching. Collins glanced around, saw the audience, and forced a laugh. "Just having some fun, no harm meant." "Leave," Jack said. Collins left. Martha's hands were shaking. She hadn't realized it until now. Jack put a hand on her shoulder. "You shouldn't have done that." "He insulted me." "He did, and you put him in his place. But Collins is Sterling's man. Now they know you have teeth. Is that bad?" Jack was quiet for a moment. Then something unexpected happened. He smiled. "No," he said. "It's not bad at all. I just wish I could have seen his face when you said that." Martha laughed. It burst out of her unexpected and genuine. Jack's smile widened. "Come on, Mrs. Mercer. Let's go home." Home. The word wrapped around Martha's heart and squeezed. She climbed onto the wagon and followed her husband out of town. The trouble came faster than either of them expected. 3 days after the confrontation with Deputy Collins, Martha woke to the sound of gunfire. She grabbed the rifle Jack had given her and ran to the porch. Jack was already there, scanning the darkness. "What is it?" "Cattle." His voice was tight. "Someone's spooking the herd." More gunshots echoed across the valley. Martha heard the thunder of hooves, hundreds of them moving fast and wrong. "They're stampeding them," Jack said. He grabbed his rifle and ran for the barn. "Stay here." "I'm coming with you." "Martha." "I said I'm coming." Jack didn't argue. There wasn't time. They rode hard into the darkness. The moon was half full, casting enough light to see the chaos ahead. The cattle were running blind, a wall of muscle and horn tearing across the valley toward the canyon. "If they go over the edge, we lose everything," Jack shouted. "I need to turn them. Stay back." "Tell me what to do." "Fire your rifle. Make noise. Try to slow the ones at the back." Martha did as he said. She fired into the air, screaming, waving her arms. Some of the cattle veered confused, but the main herd kept running. Jack rode ahead, disappearing into the dust. Martha heard him shouting. She heard more gunfire. Then she heard something else, a sound that turned her blood to ice. A scream. Jack's scream. "Jack!" She spurred her horse forward, plunging into the chaos. Cattle thundered past her close enough to touch. One clipped her horse's flank, and the mare stumbled. Martha held on, kept riding. She found him at the edge of the canyon. Jack was on the ground. His horse was gone. Run off or trampled, she couldn't tell. He was trying to stand, but his left leg buckled under him. "Don't move." Martha jumped down and ran to him. "Don't move, Jack." "The cattle." "Forget the cattle." She knelt beside him. Even in the darkness she could see the blood. His leg was bent wrong, and there was a gash across his ribs where a horn had caught him. "Can you stand?" "No." "Then I'm carrying you." "You can't." "Watch me." Martha had spent 26 years being told she was too big, too strong, too unfeminine. Now that strength saved Jack's life. She got her shoulder under his arm and lifted. He groaned through gritted teeth. She half-carried, half-dragged him to her horse. Getting him into the saddle took everything she had. "Hold on to me," she ordered. Jack wrapped his arms around her waist. His grip was weak. Too weak. Martha rode. The trip back to the ranch took forever. Jack drifted in and out of consciousness, his weight heavy against her back. Martha talked to keep him awake. "Stay with me, Jack. Don't you dare die. You promised me something real. You don't get to break that promise." "Wasn't planning on it," he mumbled. "Good, because I didn't come all the way to Wyoming to become a widow." A weak laugh. "Practical as always." "Someone has to be." She got him inside just as dawn broke. She laid him on the bed and cut away his shirt. The gash on his ribs was deep but clean. The leg was worse broken below the knee, the bone pressing against the skin. Martha's medical books had taught her about fractures. She'd never set one herself. "This is going to hurt," she said. "I know. I need you to stay still." "I know." She found whiskey in the cabinet and made him drink half the bottle. Then she found boards for splint strips of cloth for bandages, and the salve Jack had used on her blistered hands weeks ago. "Ready." Jack nodded. He grabbed the headboard with both hands. Martha took a breath. Then she pulled. Jack's scream tore through the cabin. His back arched off the bed, but he didn't move his leg, and the bone slid back into place with a grinding click. Martha splinted the leg as fast as she could. Her hands were steady. Her heart was not. When she finished, Jack was unconscious. She cleaned the gash on his ribs, stitched it closed with thread from her sewing kit, and wrapped him in bandages. Then she sat beside the bed and waited. The first day was the hardest. Jack developed a fever by noon. Martha knew what that meant: infection. The gash was dirty. Something had gotten in. She ransacked the cabin looking for anything that could help. She found dried herbs in a tin. Someone had labeled them in neat handwriting. Sarah, she realized. Jack's dead wife had known about medicine. Martha didn't recognize all the plants, but she recognized some. Yarrow for bleeding. Willow bark for fever. Echinacea for infection. She brewed a tea and forced Jack to drink it. He was delirious, thrashing and muttering. "Sarah," he called out. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I should have taken you home. I should have—" "It's Martha," she said firmly. "Martha, your wife. Sarah is gone, Jack. I'm here now." His eyes opened. For a moment they focused on her face. "Martha." "Yes." "You stayed." "Of course I stayed. Where else would I go?" His hand found hers. His grip was burning hot. "Don't leave." "I won't." "Promise me." "I promise." He slept. The second day the fever worsened. Martha changed his bandages and found the wound red and swelling. She cleaned it again, applied more salve, prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. Sometime in the middle of the night, she heard hoofbeats. Martha grabbed the rifle and went to the window. A single rider approached the ranch. She couldn't see the face, but the posture was wrong for one of Sterling's men. Too relaxed, too slow. She opened the door, rifle raised. "Hold up, hold up." A woman's voice, low and calm. "I'm not here to fight." The rider came into the lamplight. She was older, perhaps 50, with dark hair streaked with gray and skin weathered by decades of sun. Her clothes were a mix of Western and something else, beaded patterns, leather fringe. "You're the new wife," the woman said. "I'm Eliza Crowfeather. Jack helped my people once. I heard about the stampede." "How?" "I have eyes everywhere." Eliza dismounted. "He's hurt bad." "Yes. Fever. Infection." "Let me see." Martha hesitated. But something in the woman's eyes was familiar, the same steadiness she'd seen in Jack's. She stepped aside. Eliza examined Jack with practiced hands. She looked at the wound, smelled it pressed on the skin around it. Dirt in the cut. You cleaned it, but not deep enough. She looked at Martha. I can help him, but it will hurt, and you need to trust me. I don't know you. No, but you know Jack, and Jack knows me. He would trust me. Martha looked at her husband. His face was gray, his breathing shallow. She was losing him. What do you need? Eliza worked through the night. She reopened the wound. Martha held Jack down, while he screamed and cleaned it with a solution that smelled of alcohol and bitter herbs. She packed it with a poultice and wrapped it tight. Now we wait, Eliza said, and pray. I don't know how to pray. Then talk to him. Let him know you're here. Sometimes that's enough. Martha sat beside Jack's bed. She held his hand and talked. She told him about Boston, about her father and her sisters, and the years of being invisible. She told him about the train ride west, watching America transform outside her window. She told him about the moment she first saw him on the porch, how she'd expected a monster, and found a man who looked at her like she mattered. You were the first person who ever saw me, she whispered. Really saw me. Not what I wasn't, but what I was. You called me strong. You said I was beautiful. She wiped her eyes. I didn't believe you. I thought you were just being kind. But you weren't. Were you? You meant it. Jack didn't respond. His breathing was still shallow, still wrong. I need you to live, Martha said, because I'm not done becoming whoever I'm supposed to be. And I think, her voice cracked, I think I'm supposed to become her with you. At dawn, on the third day, the fever broke. Martha woke to Jack's hand squeezing hers. His eyes were open, clear-focused. You look terrible, he rasped. Martha laughed. It came out as a sob. You nearly died. Nearly doesn't count. He tried to sit up and winced. What happened? Eliza Crow. Feather saved your life. Eliza's here. She left an hour ago. Said she'd be back to check on you. Jack closed his eyes. I owe her. Again. You can repay her by not dying. Fair enough. He opened his eyes and looked at her. Really looked the way he always did. You stayed. I promised. You could have left. Gone back to Boston. No one would have blamed you. I would have blamed me. Martha leaned forward. I'm not the woman my father raised me to be, Jack. I'm something else now, something stronger, and I found that here with you. Jack reached up and touched her face. His fingers were rough but gentle. Martha Mercer, he said quietly. That's who you are now. Yes. I like the sound of it. She leaned into his touch. So do I. The recovery was slow. Jack couldn't walk for 3 weeks. Martha did everything, fed the remaining cattle, fixed the fences, hauled water, cooked meals. She worked from dawn until dark, then sat with Jack until exhaustion dragged her into sleep. They talked more than they had before. Real conversations, not just practical exchanges. Jack told her about the war, about the things he'd seen that still haunted him. Martha told him about the medical books she'd read, the way she'd always wanted to heal people, but had never been allowed. You saved my life, Jack said one evening. You know that. Eliza saved your life. Eliza finished the job. You started it. You carried me back, set my leg, kept me alive until she got here. He shook his head. Most people would have panicked. You didn't. I didn't have time to panic. You needed me. I did. I still do. Martha looked at him. What does that mean? It means I was wrong. Jack struggled to sit up. She moved to help him, but he waved her off. When you first got here, I said I wasn't looking for love. I said I wanted a partner, someone who could survive. I told myself that was enough. Wasn't it? No. His eyes held hers. Somewhere in these weeks, something changed. I don't just need you, Martha. I want you. I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. I want to build something with you, not just survive together. Martha's heart hammered. Jack, I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other, but I almost died out there, and the only thing I could think about was you. Your voice kept me alive. You pulled me back from wherever I was going. He reached out and took her hand. I love you, Martha. I don't expect you to say it back, but I needed you to know. Martha stared at him. 26 years of being told she was unlovable. 26 years of accepting that she would never hear those words. And now, this man, this rough, honest, broken man, was looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I've never been loved before. Neither have I. Not like this. What if I disappoint you? Impossible. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Jack's grip tightened. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You're stubborn and smart, and you don't take nonsense from anyone. You walked into hell to save me, and walked out carrying me on your back. If that's disappointing, then the word doesn't mean what I think it means. Martha felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. I love you too, she said. I didn't know what it was at first. I thought it was gratitude or desperation or just proximity. But it's not. It's you. It's always been you from the moment you looked at me and didn't flinch. Jack pulled her closer. Come here. She leaned in and he kissed her. Not like the brief kiss at their wedding, this was deeper, hungrier, full of everything they'd been holding back. When they broke apart, Jack was smiling. A real smile, not the ghost she'd seen before. Well, he said, I'd say we're doing all right for a mail order arrangement. Martha laughed. Better than all right. Much better. The peace lasted 4 days. Jack was finally walking again, leaning on a crutch Martha had carved from an oak branch. He was outside testing his leg when the rider appeared on the ridge. Tom Riley. Martha recognized him from the day he'd brought her to the ranch. He rode fast, his horse lathered with sweat. Jack. Tom pulled up hard. They're coming. Who? Sterling. He's got 15 men, armed to the teeth. They're hitting every ranch that won't sell, and you're next on the list. When? Tonight. Maybe tomorrow. He's burning people out, Jack. The Hendersons lost everything this morning, their barn, their house, their cattle. Mrs. Henderson. Tom's voice broke. She didn't make it out. Martha's blood ran cold. He's murdering people. And blaming it on Indians. The army believes him. Tom looked at Jack. You have to run. Both of you. He'll kill you. I'm not running. Jack, this is my land, my home, my wife's home. I'm not running. You can barely walk. Then I'll fight sitting down. Martha stepped forward. Tom, can you get help? The Reverend, the other ranchers, anyone? People are scared. Sterling owns half the territory. There must be someone. Tom hesitated. There's a U.S. Marshal coming through Cheyenne next week. If you could hold out until then, get word to him. A week, Jack said flatly. We need to survive a week. Can you? Martha looked at her husband. Jack looked back at her. Yes, Martha said. We can. Tom shook his head. You're both crazy. Maybe. But we're not quitters. After Tom left, Martha and Jack sat on the porch. Neither spoke for a long time. I won't let him take this place, Jack finally said. I built this with my own hands. Sarah died here. I can't let her grave be trampled by Sterling's cattle. Then we fight. Martha, you don't have to. Stop. She turned to face him. I am your wife. This is my home too. When you were lying there with a fever half dead, I realized something. I'm not the same woman who stepped off that train. I'm something else now, something harder. Martha. I can shoot. I can ride. I can think. Her jaw set. Sterling thinks he's coming for a crippled rancher and his helpless mail-order bride. He's wrong. He's coming for the two most stubborn people in Wyoming, and we're going to make him regret it." Jack stared at her. Then he laughed a real laugh, full and warm. "God help me," he said. "I married a warrior. You married a Caldwell. We don't lose. I thought your father—" "My father is a coward who buys his way out of problems. I'm not my father." Martha's eyes blazed. "I'm something he could never imagine, and so is Sterling." Jack reached out and pulled her close. "All right, Mrs. Mercer. Let's plan a war." They worked through the night. Jack knew the land better than anyone alive. He mapped out every approach, every choke point, every place where a small force could hold off a larger one. "The canyon is our best advantage. Only one way in, one way out. If we can block that, they have to come at us head-on. Can we block it? With enough time, yes, but we don't have enough time. What about the creek? It runs through Sterling's property before it reaches ours. Could we—" Jack looked at her. "Could we what?" Martha's mind was racing. All those engineering manuals, all those hours studying systems and structures. If we dam the creek upstream, it floods the valley. Sterling's men would have to go around. That buys us days, not hours. We can't dam a creek in one night. No, but we can weaken the bank enough that the next heavy rain does it for us." Martha pointed to the sky. "Those clouds coming in from the west. What do they mean?" Jack studied the horizon. "Thunderstorm. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after. Then we have work to do." They rode to the creek at midnight. Martha showed Jack where to dig, how to undercut the bank so the water pressure would do the rest. "How do you know this?" Jack asked, shoveling dirt despite his injured leg. "My father made me learn engineering so I could take notes at his meetings. He never imagined I was actually paying attention." His loss, our gain. By dawn, the trap was set. The storm hit that afternoon. The rain came down in sheets, turning the world to mud. Martha and Jack watched from the porch as the creek swelled brown and angry. Then they heard it, a distant rumbling like thunder, but deeper. The bank gave way. Water poured through the breach, flooding the valley below. The main approach to the ranch became a lake overnight. "They'll have to go around the mountain," Jack said. "That's an extra 3 days. 3 days until the marshal gets to Cheyenne. It might be enough. It has to be enough." But Sterling wasn't stupid. 2 days later, a different rider appeared. Not one of Sterling's gunmen, a man in a suit carrying a leather satchel. Martha recognized the type immediately. Lawyer. "Mr. and Mrs. Mercer." The man dismounted carefully, trying to keep his expensive shoes out of the mud. "I'm Alistair Pennington, representing the territorial government." "What do you want?" Jack's hand rested on his rifle. "I'm here regarding your property." Pennington pulled a document from his satchel. "It seems there's been a dispute about your water rights. Mr. Sterling claims you've illegally diverted the creek, causing damage to his property." "That's ridiculous. The creek flooded naturally." "Nevertheless, I'm here to inform you that a court date has been set. Until then, you're ordered to cease all ranching operations and surrender your firearms." "On whose authority?" "The territorial judge, Judge Harrison." Jack laughed bitterly. "Harrison's on Sterling's payroll." "I wouldn't know anything about that, sir. I'm simply delivering the order." Martha stepped forward. "And if we refuse, then the sheriff will be forced to arrest you both." Pennington met her eyes. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm just the messenger." "No, you're not. You're part of the machine." Martha's voice was ice. "You know exactly what Sterling is doing. You know he's murdering families and stealing land, and you're helping him because he pays well." Pennington flinched. "I don't—" "Get off our property." "Ma'am, now." The lawyer fled. Jack looked at Martha. "You know they'll be back, with guns this time." "I know." The marshal won't get here in time. I know that too. So what do we do? Martha was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked inside and opened the trunk she'd brought from Boston, the one she hadn't fully unpacked since arriving. She pulled out a leather journal. Old worn, filled with her father's handwriting. When I left Boston, she said slowly, I took something. Insurance, I thought. Proof of my father's crimes, the bribes, the fraud, the men who died in his factories because he cut corners. Jack stared at her. You have evidence against Cornelius Caldwell. Yes, but it's more than that. Martha opened the journal. My father doesn't just do business with crooks in Boston. He does business everywhere, including here. She turned to a page near the end. Look at this name. Jack read it. His face went pale. Wade Sterling. My father invested in Sterling's operation 3 years ago. Funded his land grab. They're partners. Martha's hands were shaking. Sterling isn't just a cattle baron. He's a front for Eastern money, my father's money. If we can prove that, we can destroy them both. Jack took the journal from her hands. He looked at the entries, the dates, the amounts. This is worth killing for, he said quietly. If Sterling knows you have this, he doesn't. No one knows. I didn't even know it was relevant until I started reading the names. Martha, if they find out, then they'll have 2 reasons to kill us instead of 1. She took the journal back. But they won't find out, because we're going to get this to the marshal before Sterling makes his move. How they're watching every road. Martha smiled. It was not a kind smile. They're watching the roads, she agreed. But they're not watching Eliza Crow Feather. Eliza Crow Feather arrived at midnight. She moved like a ghost through the darkness, appearing on the porch without a sound. Martha nearly shot her before recognizing the silhouette. You called for me, Eliza said. I need your help. I know. Tom Riley told me what's coming. Eliza stepped into the lamplight. Her face was grim. Sterling's men are gathering at the old mining camp. 20 of them now. They're waiting for the roads to dry. How long do we have? 2 days, maybe less. Jack limped to the doorway. Eliza, thank you for coming. You saved my nephew from hanging. I owe you more than one favor. Eliza looked between them. What's the plan? Martha held out the journal. I need you to get this to the U.S. Marshal in Cheyenne. It contains evidence that will destroy Sterling and my father both. Eliza took the journal, flipping through the pages. Her eyebrows rose. This is dangerous. I know. If Sterling finds out I have this, he'll hunt my people. I know that too. Martha's voice was steady. I'm asking you to risk everything. I have no right to ask. But if Sterling wins here, he won't stop. He'll take every ranch in the territory. Your people's land will be next. Eliza was silent for a long moment. Then she tucked the journal into her coat. The marshal is a man named Samuel Brennan. He's honest. One of the few. She looked at Martha. I'll get this to him. But you have to survive until he gets here. We will. Don't make promises you can't keep. Eliza turned to Jack. Protect her. She's worth more than this land. I know, Jack said quietly. I know. Eliza disappeared into the darkness as silently as she'd come. Martha and Jack stood on the porch watching the empty night. 2 days, Martha said. Maybe less. Can we hold them? Jack didn't answer immediately. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I've been asking myself that since Tom brought the news. 20 men against the 2 of us. The math doesn't work. Then we change the math. How? Martha's mind was racing. Sterling thinks we're alone. He thinks we're helpless. What if we make him think he's wrong? I'm listening. We can't outfight 20 men. But we can outthink them. Make them believe we have more allies than we do. Make them hesitate. Buy time. Deception. Exactly. Martha grabbed Jack's arm. How many rifles do we have? 6. Counting the ones in the barn. What if Sterling's men saw 6 different firing positions? What if they heard shots coming from all directions? They wouldn't know how many of us there are. Jack stared at her. You want to bluff them. I want to terrify them. Make them think they're riding into an ambush. Force them to retreat and regroup. Every hour they hesitate is an hour closer to the marshal. It's risky. Everything's risky, but dying without a fight isn't an option. Jack was quiet. Then he pulled her close. I married the right woman. You married the only woman desperate enough to have you. He laughed despite everything. Fair enough. They worked through the night and into the next day. Martha set up decoy positions around the ranch. She propped rifles against fence posts and windows, creating the illusion of multiple defenders. She strung ropes between buildings so she could move quickly from position to position. Jack couldn't move fast, but he could shoot. He positioned himself in the barn loft with a clear view of the main approach. I'll take the first shots, he said. Drop as many as I can before they reach cover. After that you start moving. Fire from one position, move to the next. Make them think we're everywhere. What if they don't retreat? Then we make our stand at the house. Jack loaded his rifle. The walls are thick. We have supplies for a week. They'll have to burn us out. Jack, I'm not saying we'll lose. I'm saying we need to be ready for anything. He looked at her. If things go bad, if I go down, you run. Take the horse and ride for Cheyenne. I'm not leaving you. Martha. No. Her voice was fierce. I already told you. I'm not the woman who runs. Not anymore. This isn't about pride. It's not about pride. It's about us. She grabbed his hands. We're in this together. Both of us, or neither of us. That's the deal. Jack's jaw tightened. She could see him fighting the urge to argue. All right, he finally said. Together. Together. Sterling's men came at dawn. Martha saw the dust cloud first. She was on the porch, rifle ready, watching the horizon. The cloud grew, spreading across the valley like a stain. Jack, I see them. His voice drifted down from the barn loft. 20 riders, maybe more. Sterling's at the front. Martha's heart hammered. This was it. Everything they'd planned, everything they'd prepared came down to the next few hours. Remember the plan, Jack called. Wait for my shot. She positioned herself behind the water trough, rifle raised. The riders came closer. She could make out faces now. Sterling's silver hair caught the early light. Deputy Collins rode beside him, a cruel smile on his face. They stopped 200 yards from the house. Jackson Mercer, Sterling's voice boomed across the distance. This doesn't have to end in blood. Surrender the property and walk away. You and your wife can start fresh somewhere else. Jack didn't respond. I'll even throw in $1,000. Consider it a gesture of goodwill. Still nothing. Sterling's smile faded. Have it your way. He raised his hand. The riders began to advance. Jack fired. The lead rider pitched backward off his horse. The crack of the rifle echoed through the valley. Before the sound faded, Jack fired again. Another man fell. Chaos erupted. The riders scattered, diving for cover behind rocks and scrub brush. Guns blazed in all directions. Bullets thudded into the buildings around Martha. She ran. Position 1, the corner of the barn. She fired twice, hitting a man who'd gotten too close. Position 2, behind the woodpile. 3 more shots, forcing the riders to keep their heads down. Position 3, the chicken coop. She fired and moved before they could triangulate her location. There's more of them, someone shouted. They've got people everywhere. It's a trap. Martha's heart soared. The deception was working. Sterling's voice cut through the confusion. Hold your ground. It's a trick. There's only 2 of them. But the riders were rattled. Half of them had retreated to the tree line. The others were pinned down, unable to advance, without getting picked off by Jack's rifle. For one glorious moment, Martha thought they might actually win. Then the barn exploded. Someone had gotten close enough to throw a torch. The dry timber went up like paper. Flames roared toward the sky, and Jack's firing stopped. "Jack!" Martha ran toward the barn. Smoke billowed around her. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe. "Jack!" A figure emerged from the inferno. Jack dragging himself across the ground, his shirt on fire. Martha threw herself on top of him, smothering the flames with her body. "My leg!" Jack gasped. "I fell. Can't walk." "I've got you. Hold on." She dragged him toward the house. Bullets kicked up dirt around them. A hot line of pain sliced across her arm, a graze not serious, but her sleeve bloomed red. They reached the porch. Martha hauled Jack inside and slammed the door. "How bad?" she demanded, checking his wounds. "Burns. Not deep. My leg gave out again." Jack's face was gray with pain. "Martha, you have to go." "Shut up. They'll burn the house next. You can still make it to the horses." "I said shut up." She grabbed a rifle and moved to the window. "We're not done yet." Outside, Sterling was rallying his men. They were forming a perimeter around the house, staying out of rifle range. Smoke from the burning barn darkened the sky. "Come out, Mrs. Mercer," Sterling called. "Your husband can barely move. You're alone. Make this easy on yourself." Martha's hands shook. She forced them steady. "I have a better idea," she shouted back. "You leave now, and I won't tell the U.S. Marshal about your arrangement with Cornelius Caldwell." Silence. Then Sterling laughed. "Nice try. Whatever evidence you think you have, it won't matter if you're dead." "The evidence isn't here. It's already on its way to Cheyenne." The laughter stopped. "You're bluffing." "Am I a rider left last night? By now she's halfway to the Marshal. Your names are in a ledger sterling. Yours and my father's. Every bribe, every payoff, every man who died because you cut corners." "You're lying." "Then why does your voice sound so scared?" Sterling's face twisted with rage. "Kill them both." The assault began. Riders charged the house from 3 directions. Martha fired as fast as she could, dropping one then another. But there were too many. A bullet shattered the window beside her. Glass tore across her face. She kept firing. "Kitchen door," Jack shouted. Martha spun. A man was forcing his way through the back entrance. She shot him in the chest. He fell, but another took his place. "We're overrun!" Jack had dragged himself to the corner, a pistol in each hand. He fired at the front door as it splintered inward. "Martha, the cellar, go." "Not without you. I can't walk. Then I'll carry you." The front door burst open. Deputy Collins charged through, gun raised. Martha fired, click. Empty. Collins grinned. "End of the line, lady." Martha threw the rifle at his face. It connected with a crack. Collins stumbled back, blood pouring from his nose. Martha grabbed the kitchen knife from the table and lunged. Collins blocked her arm, twisting the knife away. He was stronger, faster. His hand closed around her throat. "You should have stayed in Boston," he hissed. Martha clawed at his face. Her vision darkened. She couldn't breathe. Then Jack was there. He'd crawled across the room, dragging his useless leg, and now he drove his hunting knife into Collins's side. Collins screamed. His grip loosened. Martha tore free and grabbed the deputy's fallen pistol. She shot him twice. Collins collapsed. "Jack, behind you." Martha spun. Another man in the doorway. She fired. Missed. He raised his rifle. The shot never came. The man's eyes went wide. He crumpled forward, revealing a figure behind him. Eliza Crow Feather, holding a smoking pistol. "Thought you could use some help," Eliza said. "The journal. Already delivered. The marshal is 2 hours behind me, riding hard." Eliza stepped over the body. "Sterling's men don't know it yet, but their boss is finished." 2 hours, Jack gasped. "We have to hold them for 2 hours." "No." Eliza smiled grimly. "We don't." She reached into her coat and pulled out a brass horn. She put it to her lips and blew. The sound echoed across the valley. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Martha heard it hoofbeats. Not from Sterling's direction, from the mountains. Riders appeared on the ridge. Dozens of them. Shoshone warriors in full war paint surrounding the ranch. Sterling's men froze. "My people," Eliza said quietly. "They've watched Sterling steal from us for years. Today we take a stand." Sterling's voice rang out high and panicked. "This changes nothing. The army will—" "The army is coming," a new voice boomed. "But not for the Indians." A column of riders crested the far hill. Blue uniforms, cavalry sabers glinting in the sun. At the head of the column rode a man with a marshal's star on his chest. Samuel Brennan. Martha's legs gave out. She sank to the floor beside Jack, watching through the shattered window as Sterling's world collapsed. The surrender took less than 10 minutes. Sterling's men, faced with federal marshals and 50 Shoshone warriors, threw down their weapons without a fight. Sterling himself tried to run. A marshal's deputy caught him before he reached his horse. "Cornelius Caldwell's partner," Marshal Brennan said, reading from the journal as Sterling was dragged before him. "Bribery, fraud, conspiracy to commit murder. That's enough to hang you twice over." "You don't understand," Sterling sputtered. "Caldwell will destroy you. He has connections in Washington." "Caldwell's been arrested. Got word by telegraph this morning." Brennan's smile was cold. "Your Eastern money isn't coming to save you, Sterling. You're on your own." Sterling's face went white. He sagged in the deputy's grip, all the fight draining out of him. "Get him out of here," Brennan ordered. They dragged Sterling away. Martha sat on the porch, Jack's head in her lap. The doctor from Jackson's Crossing was tending his wounds, burns, rebroken leg, cuts, and bruises that would heal. "He'll live," the doctor said, "but he needs rest. Weeks of it." "He'll get it," Martha promised. Marshal Brennan approached. He removed his hat respectfully. "Mrs. Mercer, that was quite a piece of evidence you provided." "It was necessary. It was brave." Brennan glanced at the burned remains of the barn, the bullet-riddled house, the blood-stained ground. "You and your husband stood against 20 armed men. Most people would have run." "We're not most people." "I can see that." Brennan smiled slightly. "Your father is in custody in Boston. The evidence in that journal is enough to convict him 10 times over. His railroad contracts are canceled. His assets are frozen. By the time the trials are over, he'll have nothing." Martha absorbed this. The man who had thrown her away like garbage, who had sold her to a stranger as a cruel joke, was finally facing justice. She waited for triumph, for satisfaction, for the vindication she'd imagined so many times. Instead, she felt tired and strangely empty. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "There's one more thing." Brennan pulled an envelope from his coat. "This came with the arrest warrant. It's addressed to you." Martha took the envelope, her father's handwriting. She stared at it for a long moment. "Are you going to read it?" Jack asked softly. "I don't know." "You don't have to." "I know." Martha turned the envelope over in her hands. "But I think I need to. Not for him. For me." She broke the seal. The letter was short, her father's words scrawled in haste. "Martha, I underestimated you. I thought you were weak, but you destroyed everything I built. I would curse you, but what's the point? You've already won. I hope Wyoming makes you happy. It's more than I ever gave you. Your father, Cornelius." No apology, no remorse, just acknowledgement of defeat. Martha folded the letter and set it aside. "Well," Jack asked. "He said I won." "Did you?" Martha looked at her husband. At the ranch around them, damaged, burned, but still standing. At Eliza Crow Feather, talking quietly with the marshal. At the mountains rising in the distance, unchanged by the violence at their feet. "Yes," she said, "I did." The cleanup took weeks. The barn had to be rebuilt. The house needed repairs. Half the cattle had scattered during the fight and had to be rounded up from the hills. But they weren't alone. Tom Riley came with his sons. The Reverend brought volunteers from Jackson's Crossing. Even some of Sterling's former employees' men who'd been forced to work for him offered their labor as a form of penance. Eliza's people came too. They helped rebuild the barn, using traditional methods mixed with Western techniques. The result was stronger than the original A symbol of the alliance forged in blood. Jack healed slowly. His leg would never be quite right again. He'd walk with a limp for the rest of his life. But he could ride, could work, could wrap his arms around Martha every night as they watched the sun set over their land. Their land. One evening, a month after the battle, they sat on the new porch. The summer heat had finally broken, giving way to cooler nights that hinted at autumn. "I got a letter today," Martha said. "From who?" "My sister, Caroline." Jack's expression darkened. "What does she want?" "To apologize. Apparently word of what happened here reached Boston. I'm famous now. The ugly daughter who brought down a corrupt empire." Martha laughed bitterly. "She wants to visit. Make amends." "What did you tell her?" "Nothing yet. I wanted to ask you first." Jack took her hand. "It's your decision. This is your home. You choose who's welcome in it." "I know." Martha squeezed his fingers. "I think I'll tell her no. Not because I can't forgive her, maybe someday I can, but because I don't need her anymore. I don't need any of them." "What do you need?" Martha looked at him. This man who had wanted a partner and found a warrior, who had called her beautiful when no one else would, who had nearly died defending a home they'd built together. "You," she said simply. "Just you." Jack pulled her close. His lips brushed her hair. "You have me. Always." They sat together as the stars came out one by one until the sky was filled with light. The following spring, Martha discovered she was pregnant. She told Jack over breakfast, watching his face as the words sank in. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then his eyes filled with tears. "I thought—" His voice cracked. "After Sarah, I thought that part of my life was over." "It's not over. It's just beginning." He rounded the table and knelt beside her, his hands trembling as he touched her still flat stomach. "Are you scared?" "Terrified," Martha admitted. "I don't know how to be a mother. My own mother died when I was young. I have no model to follow." "Neither do I." Jack looked up at her. "But we'll figure it out. Together. The way we figure out everything else." "What if I'm terrible at it?" "Impossible." "You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true." Jack stood and pulled her to her feet. "Martha Mercer, you survived a stampede, a siege, and a battle that should have killed us both. You outthought a corrupt cattle baron and brought down your father's empire from 1,000 miles away. You are the strongest, most stubborn, most incredible woman I have ever known. If anyone can raise a child in this wilderness, it's you." Martha felt tears streaming down her face. What if it's a girl? Then God help anyone who tries to tell her she's not good enough. And if it's a boy, then I'll teach him to respect women who can outshoot him. Jack grinned. Either way, that kid is going to be a force of nature. Martha laughed through her tears. A force of nature? I like that. It's in the blood, on both sides. He kissed her then, long and deep, a promise sealed in the morning light. The child came in December during the first snowfall of winter. Eliza served as midwife. The labor was long and hard, but Martha endured it the way she endured everything, with gritted teeth and stubborn determination. When it was over, Eliza placed the baby in Martha's arms. A girl, perfect and squalling, with dark hair and eyes that would one day be the same gray-blue as Martha's own. Jack sat beside the bed, his face wet with tears. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "She looks like a fighter." "She's your daughter. Of course she's a fighter." Martha looked down at the tiny life in her arms. This child would grow up on a ranch in the Wyoming mountains, far from the cruelty of Boston society. She would learn to ride before she could walk, to shoot before she could read. She would know the value of hard work and honest love, and she would never ever be told she wasn't enough. "What should we name her?" Jack asked. Martha thought of her mother, dead so long ago. Of Sarah, Jack's first wife, whose herbs and medicines had saved them both. Of Eliza, whose courage had turned the tide of battle. "Grace," she said finally. "Her name is Grace." Jack tested the word. "Grace Mercer." "Yes." "It's perfect." Martha held her daughter close and let the tears fall. She had come to Wyoming as the ugly daughter, the unwanted one, the family's cruel joke. She had expected nothing but survival. Instead, she had found everything. 3 years passed like water over stone, smoothing the rough edges and revealing something beautiful beneath. Grace Mercer grew wild and fearless, just as her parents had predicted. By the time she was walking, she was already trying to climb onto horses. By the time she was talking, her first word was ride. Martha watched her daughter toddle across the porch chasing a butterfly and felt something she'd never expected to feel. Peace. "She's got your stubbornness," Jack said, coming up behind her, "and your recklessness." "God help us all." Martha leaned into him. His arms wrapped around her waist, and she breathed in the smell of leather and sage that had become home. "The Reverend's coming tomorrow," Jack said. "Wants to talk about the school." The school. "Jackson's Crossing is growing. They need a teacher. He thinks you'd be perfect." Martha turned to face him. "Me? You're the most educated woman in 100 miles. You've read every book we own twice over, and you taught Eliza's niece to read last winter." That was different. How? Martha didn't have an answer. "Think about it," Jack said. "You've done more for this territory than most men. Maybe it's time to build something that lasts beyond us." That night, Martha couldn't sleep. She thought about Boston, about the years spent invisible in her father's house. She thought about the girl she'd been hungry for knowledge, desperate to matter, convinced she never would. And she thought about Grace, who would grow up in a world where she could be anything she wanted. What kind of world would that be? The Reverend arrived at noon, his mule laboring under the summer heat. Samuel Moore had aged in the years since he'd married Martha and Jack. His hair was fully white now, his hands trembling slightly, but his eyes were still sharp. "Mrs. Mercer, you look well." "Reverend, please sit." They settled on the porch. Grace played in the dirt nearby, building castles from rocks and sticks. "I'll come straight to the point," Moore said. "The town needs you." Jack mentioned a school. "Not just a school, a future." Moore leaned forward. 23 children in Jackson's Crossing now. Most of them can barely write their own names. Their parents are good people, but they're ranchers and miners. They don't have time to teach, and the territory won't send us a proper school teacher. We're too small, too remote. "I'm not a teacher. You're something better. You're a woman who taught herself medicine from books, who saved her husband's life with knowledge, who stood against an army and won." Moore's voice softened. "Martha, these children need to see what's possible. They need to see a woman who refused to be defined by what others said she was." Martha looked at Grace. Her daughter had abandoned her castle and was now attempting to catch a grasshopper, her face fierce with concentration. "I'll think about it," Martha said. "That's all I ask." After the Reverend left, Martha found Jack in the barn mending a saddle. "Well, he wants me to teach children." "I heard. I don't know how." Jack set down his tools. "You know more than you think, and you learn fast. That's always been your gift." "What if I fail?" "Then you try again." He crossed to her. "Martha, I've watched you become someone extraordinary these past 3 years. The woman who stepped off that train wouldn't recognize you now, but I would. Because you're still the same person inside, just stronger, more sure." "I don't feel sure." "No one does. Not really." Jack took her hands. "But you don't have to be sure to do something that matters. You just have to be willing to try." Martha made her decision that night. "I'll do it," she told Jack over dinner. "I'll start the school." His smile lit up the room. "I knew you would." "How?" "Because you've never been able to walk away from a challenge. It's one of the things I love most about you. The school opened in September. Martha converted an old storage building in Jackson's Crossing into a classroom. She begged, borrowed, and bought books from every source she could find. She wrote to publishers in the East, explaining her mission, and received donations of primers and readers. On the first day, 12 children filed into her classroom. They ranged from 6 to 15, some eager, some sullen, all watching her with uncertain eyes. Martha stood at the front, her heart pounding. "My name is Mrs. Mercer," she said. "Some of you may have heard stories about me. Some of those stories are true. Some are exaggerated. But here's what matters." She picked up a piece of chalk and wrote on the slate board, "Learn." This word is the most powerful weapon in the world. More powerful than any gun, any army, any amount of money. Because when you learn, no one can take it away from you. No one can make you less than you are. A boy in the back raised his hand. "My pa says book learning is for city folk." "Your pa is wrong." Martha's voice was firm but kind. "I was city folk once. I came here with nothing but books and stubbornness, and those books saved my life. They saved my husband's life. They might save yours someday." The room was silent. "Now," Martha said, "who wants to learn to read?" Every hand went up. The years that followed were the fullest of Martha's life. She taught reading, writing, arithmetic. She taught history and geography and the names of the plants that grew in the mountains. She taught children whose parents had given up hope that education mattered. And slowly, surely, things changed. Boys who would have become illiterate ranchers learned to keep proper accounts. Girls who would have been married off at 15 learned that they could be something more. The students Martha taught went on to become doctors, lawyers, teachers themselves. Jackson's Crossing grew from a dusty outpost into a real town. A telegraph office opened, then a bank, then a proper church to replace the Reverend's old wooden building. And through it all, Martha taught. Grace turned 6, then 8, then 10. She was her mother's fiercest student and her father's proudest achievement. She could ride before most children could walk, shoot before most could read and argue philosophy with adults by the time she was 12. "She's going to conquer the world," Jack said one evening, watching Grace practice roping fence posts. "She's going to change it," Martha corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there? Conquering means taking, changing means building." Martha smiled. "I'd rather she build." The telegram came on a Tuesday in August. Martha was in the schoolhouse preparing lessons for the fall term when Tom Riley burst through the door. "Mrs. Mercer, this just came for you. Urgent." Martha took the telegram. Her hands were steady until she read the words. "Cornelius Caldwell dead. Stroke. Estate requires your presence in Boston. Your sisters demand meeting." She sat down heavily. "Bad news?" Tom asked. "My father is dead." "I'm sorry." "Don't be." Martha's voice was hollow. "I'm not." But that wasn't entirely true. She told Jack that night after Grace was asleep. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I don't know. They want me to come to Boston, deal with the estate." "Are you going?" Martha stared at the telegram. "I spent years hating him, and then I stopped thinking about him at all. He became irrelevant, just a shadow from another life." "That's not an answer." "I know." She looked up. "What if I go and find out I still hate him? What if I stand at his grave and feel nothing? Would that be bad?" "I don't know. Maybe." Martha's voice cracked. "He was my father. He was cruel and selfish, and he threw me away like garbage. But he was still my father. And now he's gone, and I don't know what I'm supposed to feel." Jack pulled her close. "You're supposed to feel whatever you feel. There's no right answer. I hate that." "I know." They sat in silence for a long moment. "I think I need to go," Martha finally said. "Then I'll come with you." "You hate the East. I hate being away from you more." Jack kissed her forehead. We'll bring Grace. Make it an adventure. She should see where her mother came from. Why? So she can understand how far you've traveled. The train journey east felt like traveling backward through time. Martha watched the landscape reverse itself, mountains giving way to plains, plains giving way to green hills giving way to the smoke and noise of civilization. Grace pressed her face against the window, fascinated by everything. Mama, what are those buildings, factories? Why are there so many? Because this is where many people live. Why would anyone live here? There's no room to breathe. Jack laughed. That's my girl. But Martha didn't laugh. With every mile, she felt the old familiar weight settling back onto her shoulders. The weight of expectation, of judgment, of being found wanting. You're tense, Jack said quietly. I'm terrified. Of what? Of becoming who I used to be. The ugly daughter. The disappointment. What if I walk into that house and forget everything I've learned? What if they make me small again? Jack took her hand. That's not possible. How do you know? Because you're not small. You never were. You were just surrounded by people who couldn't see your size. He squeezed her fingers. I see you, Martha. I've always seen you. And nothing in Boston can change who you've become. Martha leaned against his shoulder. I love you. I love you too. Now stop worrying. We'll face your sisters together, and if they give you trouble, I'll glare at them until they cry. Despite everything, Martha smiled. My hero. Always. Boston was exactly as Martha remembered it. Loud, crowded, suffocating. The summer heat trapped between buildings thick with the smell of horses and industry. They took a carriage to the Caldwell house on Beacon Hill. Martha's heart hammered as they pulled up to the familiar facade. This is where you grew up? Grace asked, eyes wide. Yes. It's so big. It felt small. Jack helped Martha down from the carriage. She stood on the sidewalk staring at the house that had been her prison. Ready? Jack asked. No, let's go anyway. The butler who answered the door was new. Martha didn't recognize him, but he clearly recognized her. Mrs. Mercer, your sisters are in the parlor. Martha walked through the familiar halls. Everything was the same. The paintings, the furniture, the smell of beeswax and old money. And yet everything was different. Because she was different. The parlor doors opened. 3 women sat inside. Caroline, Beatrice, and Louisa, Martha's sisters. They were older now, their faces lined with years of privilege and petty cruelty. Caroline stood first. Martha, you came. I came. And this must be your husband. Caroline's eyes swept over Jack, taking in his Western clothes, his weathered face, his quiet strength. The cowboy. The rancher, Jack corrected. His voice was polite, but his eyes were not. And the child. Caroline looked at Grace with barely concealed disdain. She's sturdy. Martha felt the old fury rise in her chest. But before she could speak, Grace stepped forward. I'm Grace Mercer, she announced. I can ride a horse faster than anyone in Wyoming. I can shoot a tin can at 50 yards. And my mama taught me that sturdy is just another word for strong. Caroline blinked. I see. Do you have horses here? I didn't see any. How do you get anywhere without horses? We use carriages. That's silly. Horses are faster. Jack put a hand on Grace's shoulder, but he was fighting a smile. That's enough, sweetheart. Let the adults talk. Grace subsided, but her eyes remained defiant. Martha felt a surge of pride so fierce it almost hurt. Perhaps we should discuss why you summoned me, Martha said. Caroline's expression hardened. Father's estate. The lawyers say you're entitled to a portion. I don't want his money. Good. Because we don't intend to give you any. Beatrice spoke for the first time. She had always been the cruelest of the sisters. You abandoned this family. You humiliated Father with your ridiculous evidence. You're the reason he died broken and disgraced. I'm the reason he faced consequences for his crimes. He was your father. He was a man who sold me like cattle because he found me inconvenient." Martha's voice was steady. "I didn't come here for money, Beatrice. I came here to see what was left of the family that threw me away." "And what do you see?" Caroline asked coldly. Martha looked at her sisters. Really looked. She saw the fine clothes and the careful hair and the bitter lines around their mouths. She saw women who had spent their lives performing for approval. Women who had never questioned the world they were born into. She saw who she might have become. "I see people I don't recognize anymore," Martha said. "I see strangers." "How dare you? I'm not finished." Martha stepped forward. "I used to hate you, all of you. I used to lie awake at night, imagining this moment, the moment I would return triumphant and make you see how wrong you were about me." She paused. But I don't hate you anymore. I pity you. You're trapped in this house, in this city, in this tiny world of appearance and judgment, and you'll never leave. You'll never know what it feels like to be truly free." "Free?" Louisa laughed harshly. "You live in a wasteland with savages and outlaws. You call that freedom? I call it home. I call it love. I call it purpose." Martha turned to Jack, to Grace. "These are my people now. This is my family, and we don't need anything from you." She walked toward the door. "If you leave," Caroline called after her, "you'll never be welcome here again." Martha stopped. She turned back one last time. "Caroline, I was never welcome here. That's why I left." She walked out of the Caldwell house and never looked back. They stayed in Boston for 3 more days. Not for the sisters, Martha never saw them again, but for Grace. Martha showed her daughter the places she had loved as a child. The bookshops where she had discovered medicine. The park where she had walked alone dreaming of escape. The harbor where she had watched ships leave for distant shores. "Were you happy here?" Grace asked. "No, but I learned things here that made me who I am." "What things?" "That I was stronger than anyone believed. That books could save lives. That sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to have." Grace considered this. "I like our family better." "So do I, sweetheart. So do I." The train ride home felt like flying. Martha watched the landscape transform in reverse civilization, giving way to wilderness noise, giving way to silence, the suffocating weight of Boston, giving way to the clean mountain air of Wyoming. When they finally reached Jackson's Crossing, Martha stepped onto the platform and breathed deep. Home. Mama. Grace tugged at her sleeve. "Are you crying?" "Happy tears, sweetheart." "Why do people cry when they're happy? That doesn't make sense." "Someday it will." Tom Riley was waiting with the wagon. He grinned when he saw them. "Welcome back, Mrs. Mercer. How is the East?" "Small." Tom laughed. "That's the perfect answer." They rode back to the ranch under a sky so vast it seemed to swallow the world. Martha leaned against Jack's shoulder, Grace asleep in her lap. "Was it worth it?" Jack asked quietly. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I finally said goodbye. Not just to my father, to who I used to be. The girl who believed she wasn't enough. She's gone now. Completely." "Who's left?" Martha smiled. "Just me. Martha Mercer. Teacher. Mother. Rancher's wife. Survivor." "Sounds like a hell of a woman." "She is." The years continued to flow like water. Grace grew tall and strong, exactly as Martha had hoped. At 16, she announced that she wanted to become a doctor. "There are no female doctors," Jack pointed out. "There will be one," Grace shot back. Martha looked at her daughter, fierce, brilliant, unstoppable, and felt her heart expand. "Then you'd better start studying," Martha said. "I have books." At 18, Grace left for medical school in the East. The same East that had rejected Martha was now forced to accept her daughter. Martha stood on the platform as the train pulled away, tears streaming down her face. "She'll be fine," Jack said. "I know." "Then why are you crying?" "Because I'm proud. Because I'm scared. Because my baby is leaving." Martha wiped her eyes. "Because somehow we raised a daughter who's going to change the world, and I don't know how that happened." Jack pulled her close. "It happened because of you. Everything she is. Everything she'll become. It started with you." "It started with us." "Fine. It started with us." Jack kissed her temple. "But mostly you." 5 years later, Dr. Grace Mercer returned to Wyoming. She brought with her a medical bag, a diploma from a prestigious Eastern school, and a determination to serve the community that had raised her. "I could have practiced anywhere," she told Martha. "They offered me positions in New York, Boston, Philadelphia. But this is home. These are my people. You sound like me. I am you. Just the next version." Martha laughed through her tears. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." Grace opened the first proper medical clinic in Jackson's Crossing. She treated ranchers and miners and children. She delivered babies and set broken bones and fought diseases that would have killed people a generation earlier. And when people asked where she had learned medicine, she always gave the same answer. "My mother taught me." The winter of 1895 was harsh. Jack caught pneumonia in January. He was 62 years old, his body worn from decades of hard work, and the illness hit him hard. Martha nursed him through it. She stayed by his bedside day and night, just as she had done so many years ago when the stampede had nearly killed him. "You need to rest," Grace said. "I'll rest when he's better." "Mama." "I said I'll rest when he's better." Grace knew better than to argue. For 2 weeks, Martha fought. She brewed the same teas Eliza had taught her. She kept the fire burning high. She talked to Jack when he was delirious, reminding him of all the reasons he needed to live. "You promised me a lifetime," she whispered. "You don't get to break that promise now." On the 15th day, the fever broke. Jack opened his eyes. They were clear-focused. "You're still here," he rasped. "Where else would I be?" "I thought I was dying." "You were. I wouldn't let you." A weak smile crossed his face. "Stubborn woman." "You married me." "Best decision I ever made." Martha held his hand and let the tears fall. "Don't you ever scare me like that again." "I'll try, but I'm not as young as I used to be." "Neither am I." She leaned down and kissed his forehead. "But we're not done yet, Jack Mercer. We have years left. I refuse to accept anything less." "Yes, ma'am." He recovered slowly. By spring, he was walking again. By summer, he was riding. And Martha, watching him cross the yard toward the barn, realized that she had never loved him more than in that moment. The 20th anniversary of their marriage arrived with the first wildflowers of summer. Grace organized a celebration in Jackson's Crossing. The whole town came, everyone who had been touched by Martha's teaching, by Jack's steady presence, by the family they had built together. The Reverend spoke first. He was ancient now, his voice trembling, but his words were strong. 20 years ago, I married a stranger from Boston and a broken man from the mountains. I didn't know what they would become. Nobody did." He smiled. "But God knew, and he brought them together for a reason." Eliza Crow Feather spoke next. Her people had become part of the community, their alliance with Jack and Martha having paved the way for understanding. "In my language," Eliza said, "there is a word for people who change the path of a river. It means those who make new ways. Martha and Jack Mercer are those people. They made a new way for all of us." Grace spoke last. "My mother once told me that the family you're born into isn't always the family you're meant to have. She was right. The family I was meant to have is right here, every person in this room. My father taught me courage. My mother taught me that knowledge is power. Together, they taught me that love isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. Martha wept openly. Jack held her hand, his own eyes shining. "Speech," someone called. "Give us a speech." Martha stood. The room fell silent. "I don't know what to say that hasn't already been said. Except this." She looked out at the faces she loved. 20 years ago, I came to Wyoming because I had nowhere else to go. I was the ugly daughter, the unwanted one, the family's cruel joke. I expected nothing but survival. She paused. "I found everything." Her eyes met Jack's. "I found a man who looked at me and saw exactly who I was, not who I wasn't. I found a community that valued work over beauty, character over status, honesty over pretense. I found a purpose that mattered, and I found myself." She raised her glass. "To the family we choose, to the home we build, to the life we create one day at a time. This is the best story I know, and I'm grateful to be living it." The room erupted in cheers. That night, Martha and Jack sat on the porch of their ranch, the same porch where they had met 20 years ago. The same mountains rose in the distance. The same stars filled the sky. Everything was the same. Everything was different. "Do you ever think about how it might have gone?" Jack asked. "What do you mean, if Sterling had won, if your father had succeeded, if you had never gotten on that train?" Martha considered the question. "Sometimes, but not often. The past is the past. We can't change it." "Would you change it if you could?" "No." The answer came without hesitation. "Not a single moment, because every moment, even the painful ones, led me here, to you, to Grace, to this life." Jack took her hand. His grip was weaker than it had once been, but no less certain. "I was broken when you arrived," he said quietly. "I was living, but I wasn't alive. I thought Sarah's death had ended any chance I had at happiness. I thought I was done. And now I understand that I was just waiting. Waiting for someone strong enough to match me. Someone who wouldn't break." He looked at her. "I was waiting for you, Martha. My whole life I was waiting for you." Martha leaned into him. "I was waiting for you too. I just didn't know it." They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened. "Do you remember what you asked me once?" Martha said. "Right after we were married, you asked me why I came to Wyoming. You said you had nowhere else to go." "I lied." Martha smiled. "I came because somewhere deep down I knew there had to be more. More than Boston. More than my father's contempt. More than being invisible." "And did you find it?" "I found everything, Jack. I found purpose and love and family and home. I found out who I was meant to be." She turned to face him. "I found that the ugly daughter wasn't ugly at all. She was just waiting for someone to see her clearly. I saw you. You did. From the very first moment." Martha kissed him softly. And that changed everything. The mountains stood eternal against the sky. The wind whispered through the pines. The ranch rebuilt, expanded, thriving, spread out below them, like a kingdom earned through blood and love. Martha Mercer, born Caldwell, the daughter no one wanted, looked at the life she had built and smiled. She had come to Wyoming as a cruel joke. She had become a legend. And that was the true story of how an unwanted woman found a man who called her queen, and together they built a love that time could never destroy.